Hi, my name is Arden English. Let me tell you a little fact about myself. See, I grew up in a small town just outside of Vancouver called White Rock. Here, let me give you a tour. This is Uptown White Rock. Here's where you'd find the local Price Martin Zellers, the latter of which was one of the final 3 in Canada. This is all a part of the Semiahmoo Mall, the hub of White Rock. If you follow down Johnston Road, you'll find many small local businesses and eventually the Hillcrest Mall, a quaint secondary shopping source to complement the main mall. Keep going and you'll find cafes, bargain stores, and thrift stores which all lead into Five Corners and the city's center. The other main district of White Rock is the waterfront, home to Canada's longest pier and one of the world's longest wooden piers. Back in the day, this is all White Rock was, a shipping port and a train station. The tracks still run multiple trains daily, including the Amtrak to Seattle, but no passenger trains stop here anymore. The White Rock waterfront is iconic for its promenade, ice cream shops, souvenir stores, fish and chips, and of course, the White Rock. And just down the road, you'll find my first house. I was too young to ever remember anything about the place, but the constant trains going past definitely left a mark on me. But this was fundamentally the area in which I grew up. There wasn't really much here. The Walmart, Future Shop, and other big retail stores were far enough away to not really impact the character of the area, so we were left with a quaint little beach town to call our own. There's only one problem. This is what it looks like now. And they're still building more. So what happened here? Well, to understand how we got here, we must first understand a little bit about White Rock's history. White Rock began simply as a part of Surrey. It was hardly known until the Great Northern Railway rerouted their line alongside its coast, building a station to act as the customs building for international travelers. This is where it all began. Shortly afterwards, the construction of the famous pier started. It acted as a port for steamships and also fishing, which proved to be a lucrative industry that is still very present in the city today. There was a sawmill, a school, but honestly, not much else. And that was the way the story went for a while, until 1957 when White Rock officially became its own city. Over the next couple decades, expansion was ever present. The pier got refurbished, the city's uptown got its feature mall, and the surrounding neighborhoods continued to grow. But that's the thing. It never stopped growing. Bigger neighborhoods meant more people, which meant more houses, which meant more families, which meant more schools, which meant more buildings, which meant more jobs, and the cycle keeps going on until we get here. But it still feels like we're missing something. Where did all these high-rises come from? Given how much protest they get, it's clear they haven't been here long. Or so I thought. Turns out, high-rises have been in the White Rock area for over 50 years, because in 1972, the Vista Royale opened at 13 stories tall. It is the oldest high-rise in White Rock by a long shot, and it clearly wasn't much of a trendsetter at the time. But it sure as hell tried. There's certainly a noticeable boom in low and mid-rise apartment complexes, with more notable ones like the formerly called Bayview Chateau behind me from 1966. But they were all located in the same 5-minute walking radius of the coveted Uptown Center. One after another, more and more low-rise complexes populated this area, gradually increasing the population as it went along. But I think the people responsible for these buildings remembered something. White Rock is a waterfront town. People come here for its oceanic scenery, not a goddamn Zellers. But there were so many trees in the way of the gorgeous views. They had to build higher, much higher. So in 2007, White Rock welcomed its second high-rise, the Bel Air. And this is where the trend was set. 2 years later, Miramar Village 1 and 2. We'll get back to those. 4 years later, Avra, 2017, Beverly, 2019, Oceana Park, 2020, Miramar Village 3 and 4, 2021, Semia, 2022, Altus, Foster Martin Tower A and B, and we are still going. There are 2 more high-rise developments under construction, being Soleil and Monaco respectively, and a 3rd Foster Martin Tower that is currently planned. Now when I voice it like this, it makes sense why locals are so concerned. In the span of 6 years, there were 10 new high-rise developments. When most of the people in the area moved here, the only high-rise they knew of was this block of gray, and it doesn't even feel like a high-rise because it's so wide. High-rises are typically defined by their sleek yet tall shape, which is where you find every other building on this list. But why are people concerned? If you look at every other major city in Metro Vancouver, they eventually get so big that they start incorporating high-rises. So shouldn't people be glad their city is growing? You kidding? People hate change. But White Rock is a special case. We're not just talking about a downtown center whose population steadily grew over time, although that is still true. We're talking about a city whose foundations are built on its quaint beach town vibes and summer getaway style. A city whose identity is rooted in its picturesque waterfront. This isn't downtown Vancouver. So why is it starting to feel like it? When I say it's starting to feel like downtown Vancouver, I'm not just talking about the towers. There's an ever-growing list of similarities between White Rock and downtown Vancouver. On the plus side, there's the walkability factor, more well-rounded and diverse communities, and gradually improving transit. But on the other hand, we're lacking general amenities, housing prices are through the roof, and, oh yeah, homelessness. Homelessness is a rather new problem for White Rock, something it's never really had to deal with before at this magnitude. I feel like this interview from early 2020 with Denise Darrell of Sources Community Resource Society really helps put it into perspective from a first-hand point of view.
Well, the reality is, of course, there is affluence here, just like any other community, but we do have an underbelly of people that are disadvantaged that's not visible.
Well, something certainly changed since that interview was taken, because it sure isn't hidden anymore. Now, of course, that interview took place just before the pandemic, which was undoubtedly a major player in this crisis. But there is much more going on here. Later on in that same video, then Mayor of White Rock Darrell Walker brings up the point of affordable housing which would especially benefit this growing homeless community. But as more of these luxury condo towers continue to go up, with little to no affordable rental housing, that reality starts to become less and less likely. So let's take a look at why the housing market is the way it is. You see, White Rock is right alongside downtown Vancouver for its natural beauty and gorgeous scenery, but that also means it costs an absolute fortune to own property here. Which brings us to another similarity between Vancouver and White Rock, that being the wonderful missing middle. For those who are unfamiliar, the missing middle refers to the style of building between the single-family home and the high-rise condominium, the middle of the scale. This typically comes down to zoning, and White Rock, just like Vancouver, has been primarily reserved for one-unit residential with the odd duplex thrown in there every now and then. This, in turn, is a stark contrast to the now bustling uptown scene of high-rises as far as the eye can see, that being if your eyes can only see a few blocks in each direction. But White Rock has one lucky difference from Vancouver. It's not crunched for space. We've established that White Rock has been going through a constant state of expansion over the past few decades, but this has especially skyrocketed in the last 10 years or so, something I've been able to witness firsthand. Here's a Google Earth satellite image of the South Surrey White Rock area from 2001. Compare it to this image from 2022, and it's a lot easier to put everything into perspective. Sure, not much has changed in the heart of White Rock besides the high-rise developments, but look over here. Pretty much everything east of Highway 99 is new developments. All the neighborhoods in the White Rock Ocean Park area have been established for decades, so the developers have had to shift their focus to the land surrounding White Rock. Since 2001, 4 full neighborhoods have been created and are still expanding. These neighborhoods being Grandview Heights, Morgan Heights, Rosemary Heights, and Douglas, respectively. So where does this all fit into the high-rise picture? Well, this is where White Rock has decided to build its missing middle housing. Well, I guess at this point we're decently into the city of Surrey, but it still affects the same housing market. These communities are valiant steps towards modernity. They're walkable, bikeable, affordable, not very affordable, but still steps in the right direction. These are self-sustaining communities with an abundance of useful amenities. Take Morgan Crossing, for example. Here you find a walkable strip mall with a plethora of shops with condos on top of them. And if you look just a block away, you'll find townhouses with more stores, malls, walk-up apartments, and more. But do they help solve our housing issue? Well, in terms of increasing the amount of units per lot, then yes, absolutely. They're a fantastic way to increase the density in up-and-coming neighborhoods, which is a positive feedback loop into more useful development. There isn't the same sort of NIMBY backlash you'd find in Vancouver projects that are essentially identical, as in this case, the neighborhoods hardly existed in the first place. But do they help solve our other housing issue? No, not at all. Out of all of the projects that I just mentioned, not a single one falls into the category of low-income housing. Now hold on, let's step back for a second recap. White Rock has grown a lot over the years, which eventually led to a surge in high-rise developments within the last 6 years. These high-rises have brought with them a plethora of downtown characteristics, including a ballooning housing market. To aim to solve said housing crisis, the city of Surrey has worked to build an abundance of missing middle housing in ever-expanding communities in the districts immediately surrounding White Rock. So how does this all relate back to the high-rises?
Well, most of the time, the people who've been complaining about these developments from the start end up blaming them for every problem I've just listed. Time and time again, you hear the same complaints. They're ruining their characteristics, they're driving up the prices, they're incentivizing the rich, and they're pushing people out of their homes. But are the high-rises actually responsible for any of this? No, at least not all of them. Do they incentivize the rich? Yes. Are they ruining the charm of White Rock? That's subjective. But are they responsible for the homelessness crisis? Not at all.
Think about it. These condominiums didn't have to be high upper-class suites. If the developers wanted to, they absolutely could have prioritized purpose-built rentals or low-income housing space. But when your city is home to one of the most beautiful waterfront views in the whole region, then most of the time, you're going to be incentivized to cater towards those who will pay some fine premiums to live in a space like that.
And it's all fun and games till someone builds a taller building right in front of you. Sucks even more when it's the same company. The high-rises that have been built are not the problem. It's the reasoning behind why they were built that's the issue. We need to incentivize and prioritize developments that aren't just exclusively luxury condo units, while simultaneously providing the low-income housing that Darrell Walker spoke about in that 2020 interview. And this is proven to be possible. Oceana Park, the soon-to-be second tallest building on the Johnston Strip, is not a six-figure luxury condo. It's a retirement community.
High-rise developments have the potential to cater toward more than just the rich, as can mid-rise, low-rise, mixed-use, and townhouse developments. It just comes down to the priorities of the market and the government. Big, tall developments are easy to criticize, especially if you've lived in White Rock for a long time, which, given the fact that White Rock has the highest percentage of seniors of any Metro Vancouver municipality, is highly likely. But we have to make one thing clear. These did not cause this.
So then what does the future look like moving forward? Yes, it's more towers, but don't panic. It's not a lot. Kind of. Let me explain.
The city of Surrey has put forward this master plan to revitalize and reshape the land around Semiahmoo Mall, but just the Surrey side, since, White Rock seems to be taking care of reshaping their side quite well.
This project has the potential to completely alter the area beyond the borders of White Rock. But for all you tower haters out there, don't worry. Only a very small portion of this project is centralized around new land use designations for high-rise developments, specifically the land where the mall currently sits.
The rest of the land in this project, which stretches as far north as 24th Avenue and as far east as 156th Street, is designed to taper off. The high-rise developments will be alongside the current White Rock ones, and the other developments will get gradually lower in height before eventually just becoming low-rise and townhouse residential. Now, of course, this plan is not all residential units. There is a lot of mixed-use commercial space, civic land, and transit opportunities, which has enough content to encompass a whole other video. But the gist of it is that Surrey seems to want in with the high-rise craze, and this is their method to achieve that.
The city has officially adopted the plan, which has not exactly been popular with those in the area. Who would have guessed? But it's not all losses for these high-rise despisers.
Back in 2021, the city of White Rock held public hearings to discuss reducing the height and density of developments throughout White Rock. Eventually, they ran a survey where individuals would choose between maintaining height policies or reducing them within the town center, waterfront east and west, and hospital areas.
Unsurprisingly, out of the 491 people who responded to this survey, the majority of them voted for whichever option would reduce the overall building heights. However, I was genuinely surprised at how clear the divide was in most cases.
For instance, in the town center section, 32% of people were fine with keeping the current measures, the ones that got us to where we are today, with only 19% wanting medium-rise buildings and 43% wanting low-rise only. Even though most people didn't want anything to do with high-rise developments, a third of them were still completely fine with it, and an additional fifth were at least okay with mid-rise buildings.
This really changed my thoughts on how the public is receiving these new developments. Although most of the time you only ever hear about the complaints, it would seem that when you randomly assess a large group of people, you'll find plenty who are perfectly fine with the progress, even more if the amenities within the city can keep up with it.
There's an additional section to this report for general comments about these height restrictions, and I found this to be the most interesting part of this document. There were hundreds of comments on each of the 4 regions of assessment with a variety of messages to portray.
Now, I read through the majority of these so that you don't have to, and I found that the main gist of it is that people are concerned about population, prices, and feel. Guess what? That's exactly what we've been talking about here. And although many people were still very critical of the high-rises, once again, it was truly shocking to me how many people were actually fans or completely accepted the direction the city was going in.
One common response I saw was about limiting high-rises to Thrift Avenue, which, as of right now, is the current south boundary of all high-rises in the city. Many say that this could give developers the option to build gradually lower buildings as the hill continues, which could give the skyline a nice taper to it. This is a design choice we already see in the Semiahmoo Town Center project.
Now, I totally agree with this. It makes perfect sense to limit the high-rises here, as this is where the ground starts to become remarkably steep. Steeper in some areas more than others. But there are other causes for concern as well.
People worry that tall buildings beyond this limit would risk not being as structurally or seismically sound, although I'm pretty sure building regulations would cover most of those concerns. Overall, the city does widely regard this area as the limit, and this survey all but solidified that notion. Although it occurred just a bit too late, as one lonely high-rise is going up south of Thrift.
The public has had their say, and the city will continue to implement the results of this survey for the future of White Rock's developments. Laws and regulations can be changed, and voices like these are one of the ways that can happen. I mean, that's literally the whole reason City Council exists and is voted in by the people. But before I let you go, there's one more thing I would like to discuss.
In August of this year, the city of White Rock applied for federal funding in order to increase the number of housing options. This would mainly include allowing for more units per lot. This would be the first notable step in creating missing middle and better rental housing within the city. And of all the councillors, only one voted against it, but it was for a good reason. Councillor Christopher Trevelyan said he voted against the application because he doubted in the ability to price these new homes at reasonable prices, which makes a lot of sense, and harked back to one of the fundamental problems in the housing market right now, being the overwhelmingly high prices. A lot of the time, the pricing of these homes is out of the hands of the city council. It's an issue that's rooted in society itself. Unless the developers are incentivized to price their units at reasonable amounts, they will continue to keep prices exactly where they are right now. I find this quote of his perfectly encapsulates the current situation.
Rentals are great. We do need more rental stock. However, if you have $3,000 or $4,000 a month to pay for a rental suite, there's tons of choices already. What we do need is rent that the average person can actually afford. And that's what's really required in British Columbia.
It's a good point.
But of everything, I think this whole ordeal is missing a key component. City Council can make these changes and create these incentives. It's a process that can be seen currently in many of the larger cities of Metro Vancouver, like Vancouver and Burnaby. Reducing development fees in certain areas can make all the difference, and enticing competition for better prices couldn't hurt either.
That being said, all of this is still being decided upon, so we'll have to wait and see how this particular story ends. All in all, though, it is undeniable that White Rock and South Surrey still need more low-income housing. Could this be achieved through high-rises? Possibly, but it's unlikely. Low and mid-rise developments or even townhouses much better fit the criteria and are a lot easier to incentivize, especially considering the local mentality towards housing. The high-rises of White Rock are certainly not going anywhere, and we're bound to see more of them in the coming years. But expansion like this is inevitable for a growing city. What we should be more concerned about is the way that we incorporate this expansion into the region. If we don't take charge now and start building housing that encompasses all abilities and incomes, then we're going to see the homelessness issue continue to grow. Surrey has been building a variety of housing in the area, and White Rock is in its preliminary stages of making changes. But it's the public that ultimately has the most say. If we want to take care of the real issues in our society, then it's time we stop worrying about the big buildings and start focusing on the little things. Thank you.